You're listening to the Resilient Author Podcast, the show that goes beyond the pages to explore the grit, courage, and resilience it takes to write and publish a book. I'm your host, Kary Youman, and each week I sit down with authors to uncover the stories behind their stories, the challenges they faced, the breakthroughs they experienced, and the wisdom they've gained along the way. Whether you're working on your first chapter or celebrating your launch, this is the place to find inspiration and practical takeaways for your own author journey. Let's dive in. All right, North. So for those who may not know you yet, what's your book about, and what do you hope readers take away from it?
Yeah, so my book is really about healing your relationship with food and body. And that really includes your relationship with yourself, right? Your relationship with yourself is sort of the umbrella. And what I was finding in working with clients is that we were looking at the relationship with food or the relationship with our body, but we were really having to dive into like deeper struggles. And eventually I came to realize that was really attachment wounds that we were looking at. So I wanted to create a model and write a book that brought the concept of attachment theory, which is usually used in like adult relationships,
Hmm.
to the relationship with ourselves and food in our bodies so that we could have deeper healing that goes beyond like what should you eat or just sort of body positivity.
Mm. Yeah, we're definitely going to dive into that a bit more. Like, was there kind of a moment in time when, like, you knew, like, you had to write this book, like, this story had to be brought to life? Like, what was that process like for you?
Yeah, so I was in a relationship that I was really struggling with attachment. I was really preoccupied and anxious in that relationship, and so I had known about attachment theory, but I hadn't really, spent a lot of time with it. So I was reading different books, and there's this book called Polysecure, which is about attachment theory in non-monogamous relationships. Highly recommend the book for anybody in any relationship style because it really breaks down attachment and security in relationships and what that looks like and why sometimes we might try to be controlling or we might be more avoidant. So it's an excellent book. And I just had this like light bulb moment when she talked about we can come to secure attachment in relationships with others and we can come to it in our relationship with ourselves, and ultimately we can sort of start with either, but we're going to have to do the work in both of those realms. And I realized that I had already come to secure attachment in my relationship with myself through healing my relationship with food and my body, and that was really the work that I was doing with clients. And so I asked a few people what they thought about it, and I was like, I don't really know why we aren't talking about this. And they're like, yeah, I don't know either, but this makes a lot of sense. And so I actually reached out to the author of Polysecure, and fortunately back then she wasn't as well known as she is now. And she spent some time with me on Zoom and helped me kind of flesh out the idea. And then she was like, all right, when's the book coming out? And I was like, I guess I'm writing a book now. And then I had
Mm.
actually multiple people ask me, when's the book coming out? That was maybe 4 years ago now.
Wow.
It's been something I've been working on, pretty consistently that whole time. So it was pretty immediate that I was felt compelled to write the book.
Mm. Wow. And it sounds like it was a pretty organic process. Like you just sort of looked at your own life, put a mirror up, and this is sort of what came out, a byproduct of that. That's powerful. And, from my own experience, every author, faces some kind of resistance, whether it's, self-doubt, perfectionism for some, or just life being life. What would you say has been one of the bigger challenges, while writing this book, and how did you work through that?
Yeah, initially I was writing the book, and I just hated it. I hated writing it. I didn't like the book itself.
Mm.
And I had a conversation actually with a book coach at the time, and she was like, "Well, what do you hate about it?" And I was like, "It's boring." So she was like, "Well, what kind of books do you like? Like, what have you enjoyed?" And so I kind of pulled out some books that I appreciated and realized that I liked it better when it was a book that had, first of all, solutions right up front. I get so bored when I'm trying to read a book and you have to get halfway in before you ever hear any sort of solutions. It's
Mm.
really hard for it to hold my attention. So I wanted some solutions right up front. I wanted to answer people's questions like as I went and I wanted it to be more like art or create, very creative. And so I wanted to put in little, you know, uh, poems or vignettes and like quotes and actually settled on using footnotes a lot of
Mm,
like telling little funny tidbits in the footnotes. And it was like, okay, now I'm entertained, and hopefully it'll be entertaining for other people. And that made it a lot easier to really fully embrace telling this story in my voice rather than like this is a model by a nurse, very clinical.
mm,
So
mm,
yeah, I had to really embrace that and just trust that like ultimately it would find the right people if I wrote
mm.
it in the way that felt most authentic to me.
Yeah. Yeah. It's funny how when we just trust that authenticity, the people we attract what we need to attract. The people find the book who need to find it. That really resonates. So North, you teach people how to rebuild trust with their bodies, which can feel impossible after years of dieting or self-criticism. I actually have a family member right now, sort of going through this process. What does rebuilding that trust actually look like in real life? I know you said you have clients. Could you share a little bit of that?
Yeah, so a big part of it is well, I have this process called the 5 A's. So it's awareness, acceptance, allowing, acknowledgement, and then maybe action question mark or honoring. And so bringing awareness to the thoughts, the sort of patterns, the things that really are causing you to have distrust with your body and shame. Often it's the systems of oppression that tell you you need to look a certain way, or there's something wrong with you if you're hungry. Right? And so these naming those things and sort of externalizing the thoughts that, oh, there's something wrong with me, instead like actually there's nothing inherently wrong with me, right? It's the messages that there's something wrong with me, the
Mm,
problem. So becoming aware of those things, and then sort of having acceptance over like, okay, yeah, this is where I'm at now. This is, what's going on for me. That also doesn't make me bad or wrong. And then we really get into like, where are these things coming from? Um, and doing some flipping that script a little bit.
mm,
And then oftentimes the action is like just giving ourselves love and care and compassion, and rejecting a lot of those messages or systems. This is getting a little bit like into the weeds, but so much of the time we have these like deeper beliefs that, there's something that makes us in particular like not worthy, untrustworthy. There's something that we've done, or there's something that we've, um, some way of being. So sometimes that requires like self forgiveness, working through those pieces as well.
mm,
And then really it's an action. So building trust with yourself, it's just like any other relationship. You have to act in a way that's kind and responsive and um, like consistent. So we have to be reliable for ourselves and really take care of ourselves and our bodies. And then our body's like, okay, you're going to feed me, you're going to stop beating me up, you're going to, you know, show up for self-care and, let me rest when I'm tired. And eventually it becomes um, a really beautiful partnership rather than this sort of adversarial relationship that so many of us have been taught to have with ourselves.
mm. That's really well put. I um I know how mean I can be to myself, or at least I've gotten better, but I know in general, human beings, we can be very critical towards ourselves. When you have clients, or even in your own experience, who have a hard time kind of working through that process, is there something that you can offer to someone who just has a really hard time being nice to themselves when it comes to maybe dealing with any kind of addiction? How do you kind of coach people around that?
Yeah. So first I just want to say, yeah, like I can so relate to that. It took years and a lot of kind of, one step forward, two steps back kind of experiences. And one of the things that really resonates for me is we're a very like shame and blame culture,
Mm.
at least in the US. I'm sure many of the cultures are, but in the US we for sure are. But we like to shame and blame someone, and then we don't. And this is kind of goes back to Brene Brown's work, where we don't really take accountability. So it's easier to just be like, "Oh, you're terrible," and then just try to move on. Unfortunately, when we do that, negative self-talk, we really it's hard on our bodies physically, and it actually
Mm.
increases what's called allostatic load, which increases like inflammation in your body. It also makes it much harder to change. So the beating yourself up, it feels like I'm terrible, I deserve to be beat up, right? Like, or I need to like berate myself to get myself to do it differently. But when we do that, it's like we want to just put our head in the sand and avoid all of the rest of it. It's just this temporary discharge and then nothing happens.
Mm.
And it keeps us really stuck in that cycle. So first, like, you don't deserve to be beat up constantly, whether it's by yourself or someone else, right? So it's time to like have some compassion for yourself. And then secondly, it actually doesn't even work, right? So if you're not going to do it for your own sense of deserving, at least know that like that's not going to work. So we do really have to bring awareness to it. So oftentimes people are like, "Oh, I just banish those thoughts," but actually, we need to bring awareness to what the thoughts are and what are they based in. Is this because someone else thinks I should be a certain way? Is this because I heard these messages when I was young? Is this because um, I actually feel bad for my behavior? Do I need to actually adjust things? Right. And then from there, we can start to counteract those thoughts. So it's possible that, you know, eating these 3 cookies doesn't mean anything about who I am as a human. Possible that being this weight actually isn't a measure of, my worth. It's possible that even though I did something bad in the past, quote bad, uh, even if I hurt people or hurt myself, it's possible that like I just made a mistake and I don't deserve to like constantly beat myself up for the rest of my life. Right.
Mm.
So then we want to start counterbalancing those. And eventually over time, those thoughts stop ruling your life. They might come, but they're going to come a lot less, and you're going to be able to like get out of that spiral much faster, or not even start to spiral. You could just be like, "Oh, I don't know. Oh, I'm having this thought, but it doesn't mean anything," and I can just move on. So,
Mm.
yeah, so just want to encourage people that you're not alone. This is really common, um, and there's a way out.
Mm. Yeah, I appreciate you zooming in on that. It's amazing how much grace and space we can give to others, but when it comes to ourselves, it almost seems like it's a completely different. The rules are different, and I think the way you just shared that, I think hopefully it'll give people permission to, yeah, just be a little bit more kind with themselves. Mm. So, sort of turning back into your process of writing your book and becoming a published author. I mean, that's a bucket list item for a lot of people. How did
Mm,
getting your book out into the world, change you personally, creatively, or just professionally? What has changed in your life?
yeah, that makes me emotional.
Mm.
Asking that question, gosh. Yeah, this has been like the last couple of years of my life have been the hardest years of my life. And so it's wild to me that I actually was able to get the book published during this time. Um, it's something that I feel really passionately about. I really want to have an impact in the world, and just felt like, people needed to have access to this for very low cost. Um, and so it has changed me in that like I feel so much more true to myself, which sounds kind of strange, but I feel like I stuck with something that really mattered to me.
Mm.
And actually, I have resisted being a writer my whole life. In high
Mm.
or in high school, I did really well, but I got a D in English. And then and I have dyslexia, and I'm neurodivergent. Like I struggle with focus and things, but through this process, oh, and then in college, I actually had some writer instructors be like, I know you're capable of more, and really push me, and then be like, you should write. And I was like, nope, I definitely should not.
Nope.
Um, yeah, yeah. And so, but I had a message I wanted to get out there, and it felt like the way to do it. And so now, actually, having written this book, I actually really love the process. Like it's
Mm.
hard, it's challenging for me, but uh, there's something so rewarding about it. And so now I'm going to write like 3 more books.
Mm. I
So
love
I would
that.
say that's the
You
biggest
said it
change.
here. Yeah, you said it here. So we're gonna hold you to that, North. That's
Yeah.
beautiful. Yeah, thank you for sharing that. So just speaking of the journey, when it comes to publishing, every author sort of takes a different path, whether it be traditional, some go hybrid, and a lot these days go independent or self. Um, which path did you decide to take, and what was the most challenging or rewarding part of actually getting your book out into the reader's hand?
Yeah. I really wanted to do traditional publishing. I thought that it would um, sort of give more um, a little more publicity, but also more credibility because I am a nurse and I really want this book to be used in academic settings. And there is still a bias against self-publishing. So, like, if you want your book to be on, you know, like the reading list for some class or something, it's less likely to happen, at least from the research that I did, if it's self-published. And so I, I wanted to do self or traditional publishing, but I did it backwards. So I wrote the whole book and then I started looking at publishing proposals. Well, you're supposed to do the publishing proposals and then like get an agent and then do the whole, right? Like I didn't do any of that. So then I had to write all these publishing proposals, which felt like writing 40-page book reports about my book. And I was so over it. Wait,
Yeah.
and it's from the time you get the deal, it's still like another 2 years usually until your book gets published, right? So I was like feeling the urgency of like, I want this book out right away. Like people were asking for it.
Mhm.
So, and I just couldn't. I mean, I would do like one publishing proposal like every 6 months or something. And it was just,
Mm.
I hated it. I
Really
hated it.
slow. Yeah.
Yeah. So eventually, I had a client, and everyone in my life was just like, you know, you've got to get this book out in the world. Like this is, I've been talking about it for years at this point, right? And ultimately the book was pretty much done. So it was, yeah. So I had a client who said, "Hey, I know this is short notice, but there's this 4 week self-publishing workshop happening starting tomorrow morning that I just saw. And I happened to be free. It was like a Sunday. And
Mm.
I couldn't sign up online. I messaged the instructor and was like, hey, is it too late? Can I get in? And they said, sure. But I was like, I'm only going to come to the first class and then we'll see. And I went to the first class and I was like, okay, I'm going to come to the next class. And
Mm.
finally, I was like, I'm in. This is amazing. Yeah, they just really wrote, like, had out all the, like, you gotta, like, here's how to register your book with the Library of Congress, stuff that, like,
Mhm.
I had no idea about. So,
Mhm.
yeah, so I decided to self publish. And then I really needed, like, one on one support. So I got coaching, more coaching. I hired an editor, um, and I hired somebody to design the cover of my book. And then ultimately ended up hiring that person to also design the interior of my book because it was very like, it has a lot of like separate pieces that needed to flow together really well.
Mhm.
And yeah, and then I just created a Trello board. For those of you who don't know, it's just like a kind of like a project management free software. You can create little cards and to-do lists, and I put everything on there, and I just like each week worked a little bit at a time until it
Mm.
was finally done. And I'm so happy with my choice to self-publish. I had
Mm.
complete creative control. It was, um, I'm really happy with the outcome, the way the book looks and turned out, and how, sort of ways that I was. encouraged and pushed myself to um, like make it just exactly how I want it to be, you know?
Mm. I love that. So from idea to publish, what was the amount of time? What was the time span?
I think it was a total of about 4 years,
4 years? 4 years?
maybe even longer. Yeah. Maybe it was
Mm,
like, yeah, it's hard to know for sure, but yeah, 4.5 maybe.
mm,
Um, and there were large chunks of time where I didn't work on it. I had a lot happening with my family, and a lot of tragedy in there, and some really beautiful things too. Um, but yeah, I had to work on it a lot. Like,
mm,
it took up, a good amount of time for sure.
mm. You got it done though. You got it
I
done.
got it done. Yeah, and actually, I mean, when I say that, like, I think it was like it was right there with me that whole time,
Mm.
but the actual amount of time I was sitting at my desk was probably not as much as I think, right? Like sometimes it was like just an hour and I could get a lot done or cleared up, or but then you spend so much time like worrying about it. So that's one thing I would encourage people to do is like when you're not sitting down working on your book, like, you know, try not to stress about it.
Mm. That's really good. I wish that's something I just took on earlier. Because to your point, like once you start, it's just in your head, consuming as much real estate as possible if you let it in. Sometimes when you let it go, when you come back to writing, you actually come back fresher and have a lot more clarity around what you want to share. So I that resonates.
And I can't tell you how many times I felt super stuck on some section or how to transition some piece or something. And then, I'd just be in the shower. Like almost so many times I was in the shower and it would be like, oh yeah, of
There it
course.
is.
Like
Yeah.
it makes so much sense. I don't know why I didn't see it before, but
Yeah. There's something magical about the shower. I don't know if it's just the water or the space, but yeah, I hear that from a lot of people. Some of their best ideas come from taking a shower.
mhm.
Mm. So you talked about this a little bit, but resilience shows up for all of us differently. Sometimes it's discipline, sometimes it's faith. For a lot of people, it's community. What would you say resilience looks like to you these days?
Yeah. Um, Trusting, I think it's having faith in like my process, right? And my intentions. I think when I was younger, and especially, I'm in recovery, so especially when I was, out there using substances and things, like I was also like a single mom and kinds of stuff. But um, I really struggled to like complete anything.
Mm,
And so I had a lot of fear that I would not complete this book. And I had so much uh, faith in the idea of the book. First off, it was really just felt like something I had to do. A mess, a world, an idea that I had to get out into the world. So had faith in the kind of concept, but it really helped me develop faith in my own perseverance and my own ability to like keep working on things. And I also learned like when you're stuck, ask for help. Like
mm,
resource yourself, even if it's just like sitting down with someone else while they're like paying bills or something, but you're like working or talking through it, or having a coach. Or right now I just found a new friend who's trying to write a book, so we're sitting down at a coffee shop like about once a week and doing some writing together. So
mm,
however you can resource yourself, and that by doing that and really continuing with that process, now I have a lot more faith in my ability to complete things and my ability to um, just chip away at it.
mm. What a beautiful gift to have to give yourself, knowing that like you can complete something.
Yeah, it's
It's
wild.
powerful. Yeah, I can relate. I can relate. So, North, this is the Resilient Author Podcast. A lot of the listeners are, sitting on a story. They've opened up a couple of documents, they've typed a little bit, maybe they've got a couple of chapters, but they get stuck. They've stopped. What would you say to someone who feels sort of stuck or that they may not be ready to get their book out? Any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I'd say take a little break, um, and then come back to it and just start reading your book and just see
Mm,
like what intrigues you, what do you find interesting, what's something you're like, this isn't quite right, and like let yourself write the parts that are fun. So like take a break, have some fun, just be really curious, like play with your book a little bit. And then yeah,
mm,
absolutely get support if you need it. I think most people do. And it's not really talked about.
mm. Be curious and play with your book. That's good stuff. That's good stuff. Before we close, North, I would love to know what you're up to now. Like, what are you working on? What's coming up next? Any new books? Any projects? Any creative adventures you're excited about?
Yeah, where am I at now? I'm taking a little break. I'm going to write a workbook to accompany the book, although, a lot of it is already in there, so it'll just be sort of going through and seeing what else needs to be, what else needs to be said and what do I want to keep from the book but put in workbook format. And then well, actually, that's supposed to be the next project, but I started writing a couple of other things that are more um, like memoir, but with a braided story element. So,
Hmm.
um, my brother, unfortunately, was financially abusing my mom, and it was really hard on my family. And I really want to write a story that highlights like how that came to be in my family, like how that happened, and
Hmm.
then also like how it came to be um, in our culture, right? So like
Hmm.
lack of mental health care and like what addiction services are like and toxic masculinity and patriarchy and all of those pieces that sort of fosters um, more wounds and just harming each other. And so, yeah, so I'm gonna write that book. That's gonna be a lot. That's probably like a 5 or 10 year, who knows? But I just feel compelled. He's just passed away about 2 months ago, and so I think as part of my grieving process, it will be really helpful to do writing around that. Um, and then I have like a story that I'm writing that's like a somatic, um, it's like somatic, sort of witchy story about like making people take accountability for themselves. Is kind
Hmm.
of an interesting, very witchy story. And
Hmm.
then long term, I want to write a memoir that's about my experience growing up, and then learning that my biological father isn't my dad that raised me was.
Hmm.
So yeah, I've got a bunch in here, kind of like what you're talking about. It's like it starts to be so consuming and with so many different pieces. I'm like, okay, I really need to get like one or two of these like through the pipeline so that they're like it's yeah, real loud in my head, right?
Yeah, yeah. What a gift, though. It sounds like you have a lot of different things to pour into, and like you said, it's just a matter of giving them the space to breathe so they can come out and show you what they really are. That's awesome.
Yeah, and I think now I trust a lot more that I can sort of work on this over here and then work on that over there. And I don't
Mm,
have to just sit down and like plow through something.
mhm,
Um, and that like by following the pieces that are pulling on me, um, it's like I can do it in a way that doesn't feel so burdensome. Just like I have to write. Instead, I can be like,
Yeah.
oh yeah, like this came to me about this memory about my brother came to me, or this, sort of piece about the somatic story or something, and I can just sit down and let that flow rather than it being
Yeah. Cracking the whip
like
and
a,
I need to write.
yeah, 100%. Yeah.
From 8 to 11:30, I must do it now. And there's a time and
Yeah.
a place for everything. No shame to anyone who does that, but I hear you. I can relate.
Yeah.
Um,
Some people, it's sit down and, and something will happen. And for me, sometimes I can get into a flow like that, but most of the time I have to leave a lot of spaciousness in my schedule and then like follow the energy.
mm,
Yeah.
yeah, follow the energy. I can definitely dig that. Yeah, I don't identify as like being a witch, but I know a lot of people who do, and the witchy somatic story just sounds really, I don't know, it just sounds really interesting. So we'll have to have to circle back on that. I'm curious to see what you do with that.
Yeah, I'm not even sure if like where I'll put it or if I'll publish it, or I mean, why not, right? But also,
Mm,
um, yeah, and it keeps kind of developing more. So
mm.
it's sort of like, after you read a bunch of self-help books, you kind of need something that's just like for
Complete
fun.
opposite. Yeah, absolutely.
That's where I'm at now. Yeah, I just need a little bit of a reprieve.
Yeah, I hear that. Well, you'll have to keep me posted on that. So, North, we're going to wrap up here shortly, but before we do, I'd like to invite you to what I call the lightning round.
All right.
Will you accept?
Yeah, thanks.
All right. So there's 5 questions. Just speak from your heart. Nothing, too complicated. So, we'll start with what's one book that changed your life?
Mm. Oh, see, my friend's like 70 books. Let's see. I can't believe I'm blanking so hard right now. I think one of the books that really changed my life is a book called Burnout by Emily and Amelia Nagoski, and just
Hmm.
really talks about how um, the ways in which people can be put into this role where they're just expected to pour everything out with nothing, kind of filling them
Hmm.
back up, and how to take care of yourself through that. Yeah.
Hmm. Sounds like something a lot of people could benefit from today, especially. Um,
Mhm.
if you could have dinner with any author, past or present, who would it be?
There's a book called Weightless by Yvette Dion, and the author, I am not certain if that author is alive or not. Um, there's somebody who has a lot of chronic illness. I would have dinner with them because they have that sort of braided storyline that I think is so
Mm,
brilliant, where, they're really talking about their childhood and how they were bullied at school, and, how they were treated by doctors and all of these people for being larger. And at the same time, they're talking about how like US legislation and the BMI and, different things that influenced um, sort of this trickle down effect of like actually created a lot of harmful um, culture. And so anyway, I think
mm,
it's brilliant. I'd love to talk with that person. Yeah,
mm.
you should look and
Yeah,
see if they're alive and reach out if they are. Yeah.
yeah, absolutely. When it comes to getting ideas out, are you more of a writer or a talker?
So I'm more of a talker. um yeah, so I'm excited. I was saying I was excited about your new book. Yeah.
Awesome, awesome. Finish this sentence, North. Writing my book taught me to.
Trust my intuition.
Hmm. In one word, what does resilience mean to you?
Perseverance.
Mm.
Yeah.
You made it. You made it to the final chapter. Um, if you could leave one piece of advice or encouragement with our listeners today, something that, they'll take long after the episode is over, what would it be?
I would say like don't worry about, trying to do it perfectly or trying to make it work a certain way. Like let your book just do it. Let your book kind of come to life. Almost like follow the book.
Mm,
Yeah. And, regardless of what happens, how many people read my book or whatever happens with it, it is at the library, which was so like, I
that's pretty
felt so
cool.
great about that. That made me so thrilled. Uh, Regardless of what happens with that, like it changed me, right? Like I feel so grateful to have been able to write this book and put it out. So
Mm,
yeah, follow the book.
mm. That was really well put, and I really appreciate you just sharing a piece of yourself today. I know there are a lot of people that are going to get some insight, and hopefully they take action with a lot of the goodies that you left in there. Before we wrap up, where can people find your book and continue to follow your journey?
Yeah, so my website, coachtiffany.rn.com/book, and you can buy it from me directly, signed copy, or you can buy it from any of the online retailers, but many of the links for the online retailers are right there on my website. So, oh, and there's not only is there the paperback, but there's ebook, and now there's an audiobook that came out.
Hey, look at that. That autographed copy sounds pretty good though too. So yeah, you got options. North, thank you so much for spending some time with us today. Would love to circle back maybe in a few months and see how things are unraveling for you.
Sounds great. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, thanks for being here.
Thank you so much for tuning into the Resilient Author Podcast. I hope today's conversation gave you both inspiration and practical tools for your own journey. If you've been carrying the idea for a book, but haven't started, or you started and feel stuck, I'd love to invite you to join my 5-day Speak Your Book Challenge. In just 5 days, you'll speak the outline of your first draft and discover how to turn it into a finished manuscript and a published book. You can join anytime at voicetobook.co/challenge. Until next time, keep going, stay resilient, and remember, your story matters.